Next thing we want to do, after we know the size of our paper, is cut down all of our paper that we're going to be printing on. Now, if we're just proofing today, if we're just testing, the size of your paper probably doesn't matter too much. You just want to get it on the paper. But when you're ready to addition, that is to make a series of identical copies of your image, then I'd want to prep all my paper beforehand. Okay? We have different types of paper. I mentioned the Japanese paper. It has razor cut edges, right? And then typically for screen printing or other processes, or even using this paper for relief, this particular sheet has a decal edge and a torn or a cut edge. So I have a decision to make. Do I cut down my paper or do I tear down my paper? Because this particular inexpensive Japanese paper is razor cut, I'm going to just cut it. So the first thing we'll do is measure on either end of the paper with my marks where I want to cut. So I'm marking, again, this is 31 inches long, so I'm marking it at 15 and a half. I've measured on this end and on this end. And to be safe, I should even measure in the center. If I just measure in two, I could measure 15 on this end, I could measure 16 on this end, have the paper cut and not realize it's crooked. If I measure in 3 spots and one of them's off, then I know I did something wrong before I even cut the paper. So it's just kind of a safeguard to make sure that everything remains straight. Using our cutting mat, I want to just score through the paper. I don't have to push really hard. The nice thing about this self-healing mat is that it allows you to just lightly kind of cut through. And that's a good strategy for anything you're cutting, especially thick things like mat board or cardboard. If you score through several times, you get a much straighter cut than when you try to push really, really hard and cut it all at once. Okay. Now, this paper that has a decal, I probably want to have a torn edge instead of a cut edge, right? So I've got a little scrap here that I'm going to do this on. It's a little darker, so it's maybe a little easier to see. You can see there's the deckled edge, okay? And then this is the torn edge. Now, how do we tear paper? Same thing, we'd want to make our marks, and then we'd use one of our tear bars to assist us. Now, the tear bar doesn't have any markings on it, but it does have a beveled edge, right? And that beveled edge is the side that we're going to use to tear the paper with. It's hard to tear small amounts of paper off, say less than an inch or so. So I want to think about that based on where I'd place the bevel. If I wanted to tear off just an edge, I would be better to have that inch under the tear bar and pull on the bulk of the paper rather than have the tear bar on the bulk of the paper and try to pull on that small 1-inch section. Okay. You can also use the grid that's on the self-healing mat to help make sure that you are lining things up straight. Again, I'm not making any marks on this, I'm just going to show you how to tear. So, once I've got my tear bar down, I want to pull against that edge. Doesn't have to be fast, doesn't have to be slow, just kind of nice and even. If you pull too fast, you can get more of an irregular edge. Now you can see that doesn't look like the decal, but it is a much, much softer edge than a razor cut edge, which is what this is. And so the aesthetic of this seems a little closer to that. They go together, they're more visually similar. Once we've got our paper prepped, now we're ready to print.